What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. Your New Orleans Saints actually had them taking Mason Taylor in the third round of said mock draft. It started round one with Marshall Edge, Mike Green, which, again, no fault to Green, but if you want a workout that would, or if you want a pick that would absolutely trigger Saints fans, look no further than going with a small school pass rusher with a high relative athletic score. Only 8.5-inch hands, though. Mike Green.
What?
So, yeah, we love to see that, dude.
8.5?
8.5. That's right, baby. We
Is
love
that-
to see that.
Oh, my God.
9-inch king. Then it has him go with East Carolina cornerback Siobhan Revel. I guess here's the deal. Mason Taylor, though, in this going third round, absolutely the Saints would be interested in Taylor. Although you have Foster and you signed Juwan Johnson to that big deal. I think, though, or do we think that Taylor helped himself enough yesterday where he's not going to be around at pick 71?
I thought you were going to ask, if he would be there. He's not going to be there.
Yeah.
He ain't going to be there. He's not going to be there at 71. The production, from the moment he stepped on the campus until he played his final game for LSU, all-time leader in like every category for tight ends, and then he did what he did yesterday. He's a top 55 pick for me. So I don't think there's any way he gets to 71. He's going to impress, and probably already has in draft meetings as well. High football IQ.
Yeah.
He's not lasting until 71.
Now, another name that's been making the rounds in Saints circles, the Shadur Sanders stuff seems to continue to percolate, as it appears now that the Giants will not be selecting a quarterback. The Browns, I think the Browns are the latest that they're leaning towards Abdul Carter as well. So Shadur could be there at 9. We talked to Nick Underhill about this, and he pretty much shut down the idea outright, which that makes sense. But what about Quinn Ewers? The Saints and Quinn Ewers set to have dinner on Monday. And what is Ewers' current draft grade? When is it thought that Quinn Ewers is going to be off the board?
I'm seeing like late 4th, maybe even 5th round.
And so I guess that begs the question, do the New Orleans Saints explore that? I mean, the same way you did with Spencer Rattler last season.
Yeah.
Here you have a guy that was a massive recruit coming out of high school, somebody who had a lot of success on the college level. Maybe not quite as much as some people wanted, but look, man, when he was on at Texas, he looked really good. Like, you look at that Michigan game last season. Obviously, the Arizona State game wasn't good for the majority of it, but when you had to have it at the end, Ewers making some pretty massive plays. Would you be down for the Saints? Like, what's the highest that you would want the Saints to go to get Quinn Ewers?
I don't think third round's crazy. Certainly not in the 4th round. He's a borderline top 100 player in this draft. I think ESPN actually has him like 112. So he's right there on the edge of that. When Quinn Ewers is locked into and it looks like he cares, man, he can spin it as well as anybody. Like, he can make all the throws. I've covered like 4 or 5 Texas games in person over the last 2 years, and he'll make you go, not many guys can do that. Not many guys can fit it in that window. The problem is, and you've heard me say this 100 times, for whatever reason, there's like once or twice every game he forgets every rule that he's ever learned. He's like, I'm going to throw that ball.
Yeah.
There's a squatted corner in cover 2, and I'm going to throw the hitch.
Yeah.
And he predetermines it, or he thinks because he's got such a great arm that he can do things like that, and it gets him in trouble so many times. And so there is a lot of good when you watch his tape, more than any like 4th round quarterback you're going to watch. The problem is he short circuits every single game for a handful of plays.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy too. He throws with a touch that is nearly unparalleled. Like like Jake's saying, when it is on and he's making the correct decisions, his throws are ASMR levels of buttery smooth. Like,
Yep.
I can feel them in my molars. That said, I would not expect I would not have a ton of expectation if you were to draft Quinn Ewers, just like I don't have a ton of expectation for Spencer Rattler. It would very much be a flyer, like maybe you get a guy, because we got to remember that, quite frankly, there just aren't that many late-round quarterbacks that end up being a legitimate starter in the NFL. Right? Have we done this exercise before? Like, if you look at the top 12 guys right now, certainly Dak is probably the highest paid of those kind of mid to later picks. Yeah. Brock Purdy would be another one that jumps to mind, but almost everybody else is first round?
Yeah, I just off Jalen Hurts, second round, right?
Okay. Yep. He would be probably the best in terms of not being in the first round. So just approach the Quinn Ewers thing with that context in mind, right? Like, good to take a flyer. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you get a guy. That'd be awesome. But don't put too much expectation on it. One thing I'll say, though, Jake, I love I don't know if I want to offer an I love or not, because it probably is. I don't know if I would have done the same thing, but I think it's worth pointing out the maturity of Quinn Ewers, because the opposite was pointed out for much of his career.
Mm-hmm.
He was the number one player in the country coming out of high school. He reclassifies, and he goes up to Ohio State because they could do NIL payments when Texas could not. So he started his career by doing everything he could to chase the bag, right? Then he ends up back at Texas, and he ends up working his way to be the starter. And despite the fact that he leads Texas to 2 good years, including back-to-back playoff appearances, Texas wants him gone at the end of this last season.
Yeah.
Said, hey, Quinn, thanks, but we're done with you. And he had a market in college football. Like, the rumors are he had anywhere from $4 to $6 million offers on the table to do exactly what Carson Beck did and go be a quarterback for 1 year somewhere else. But Quinn, over time, citing his own personal growth, said, look, that's not really what motivates me, the money. And I feel like I am Texas through and through. And I don't want to ruin that reputation by going to play for someone else. And so now he's going to go to the NFL, and he'll probably make less over the entirety of his contract than he would have made in just one more year of college football. And you can say that's dumb, you can say whatever, but I'm not disagreeing, but I think it's worth highlighting the character growth there from Ewers in terms of what motivates him and what he values. And in this more cynical age of college football, it's nice to see someone who still just really cares about the school itself that he's been a part of.
That's a great breakdown, because you're right. Like, he came into college and he had the haircut and he was the number one guy. He was one of the highest rated recruits we had ever seen. And you really honestly never heard any good stories about him, like right, wrong, or indifferent. And we didn't know those stories. We weren't there in Columbus, but there wasn't a lot of good. And then he goes to Texas, and certainly within the last year and a half has matured himself. Even how he handled the Arch Manning stuff, I thought was really well done.
Cool, just never,
Like, even covering that Sugar Bowl 2 years ago when Arch, first time he gets to talk to the media and everybody's there, that picture came out. Now, it wasn't the true story because Quinn had already gone. The media had already talked to him. I was like 5 feet from there. And then Arch, it was the first time he got a chance to talk. It's Arch's hometown. So a little misleading, but still, once that picture came out, he didn't cry about it, didn't complain about it. He went about his business, had a good game against Washington. And then within this year, kind of the same thing. You're hearing Arch Manning stuff, and he led his team to, a place back-to-back years that Texas hasn't been in a very long time. And you're right. Like, he definitely would have made more coming back to college.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably going to have a contract that's like 4 years, $4 million.
Yeah.
In the NFL, like if he gets drafted where we think he's going to. But, he challenged himself, thinks he's ready to go, and didn't chase the bag this time and chase his dream.
Yeah, and it's at a time when, look at the relationship between Carson Beck and Georgia. Here's a guy who you would have thought that these two sides. Remember, Georgia fans were obsessed with Carson Beck at first, right? He waited his turn. In the age of the transfer portal, he was patient, and he bided his time, and then eventually he took over the starting job. And yet, now, there is no relationship. In fact, they kind of hate him. Did you see Gunnar Stockton talking about Beck.
Yeah.
When they asked, did Carson tell you he's leaving? He kind of hit this smirk and was like, he was busy. You have Kirby Smart in the run-up to the playoff game talking about how the guys play harder for Gunner. So in this age of NIL, again, it's easy to become cynical, and it's easy to kind of lose sight of what motivates you. And Quinn Ewers did not do that. And so if the Saints do end up taking a flyer on Quinn Ewers, I score him now much higher in the intangibles department and leadership than I maybe would have previously. Again, I don't have a lot of expectation, just like I don't for Spencer Rattler. But, you throw enough of these guys against the wall and maybe you end up finding an answer somewhere therein.
I will say this, and last thing on Quinn Ewers, arm talent-wise and the ability to make the throws that you have to make to play in the NFL, I think he would have the best arm talent in the Saints quarterback room, including Derek Carr.
Yeah, probably.
Now that's not the only thing you have to be successful in the NFL, but you mentioned it. When he is throwing down the sideline to Matthew Golden and he drops it in a bucket, and you've heard me say this, he looked like he ran down there and placed it in his lap.
Yeah.
And he makes throws every game that I've ever covered him that nobody else in the building can make, including Arch Manning, I think. Now, that's not to say Arch won't be a better quarterback, but as far as what he can do, we forget he was a perfect recruit. Like, he was one of the top 3 guys ever when he was getting evaluated. You still see that a ton in his tape.
So maybe the New Orleans Saints with a Texas quarterback in their future. We will see. Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.